All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Emerge Champs podcast. It's February, it's relationship month here at Emerge. And we thought it'd be a cool idea for us to produce a podcast where we talk about relationships in all of its forms. So we're talking the single category. We're talking those who are dating, those who are engaged to be married, and those who are even married. So we're going to discuss it all. But this group in particular is the single and searching crowd. All right. We're going to introduce ourselves starting right here.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nancy.
My name is Kanika.
My name is Bumi.
My name is Laula.
All right, thank you. And my name is TJ. And full disclosure, I am engaged to be married, but since this is our first podcast, I thought I would, moderate the first one and kind of set a standard for each and every one of us. So let's just jump right into the conversation. Relationships are between two people. Starts off with one person and another. If you're a Christian, then you firmly believe that it's between a man and a woman. And with that said, do you believe in gender roles? If so, how would you define those? And anyone can just jump in. The role of a man and a woman. Do you believe that there are set gender roles, and what are those?
Do I believe in gender roles? Not entirely. I mean, I do feel like there's certain things that a woman can do that a man can't do and vice versa. But I feel like when it comes to raising a family, if I'm good at one particular thing and you're good at it too, or you're good at something else, then it shouldn't be my sole responsibility to, like, let's say cook, because that's usually like the main one. If you're good at cooking, I'll wash the dishes. If you're good at organizing and folding and all that stuff, then I'll do something else. So I don't really believe in gender roles. If you're good at something, be good at it.
You did say that you feel that there's some things that a man might be better at or better suited for, and vice versa for a woman. So if you want to point out maybe one or two of those things, like what do you think like a guy is better suited for?
Actually, that I don't really know, but I know as a woman, I mean, there's certain things like, I mean, obviously a man cannot give birth, so that's a particular gender role.
Well, yeah, if you subscribe to the theory, the theory goes that women are more nurturing, just by nature of, women are the ones that give birth to children and do care for the children the majority of the time. So it'd be, I guess, kind of cliche or stereotypical to say that a woman has more of a nurturing spirit. Anybody else?
I want to say yes to a certain extent that I do believe in gender roles. I think the basics, like a man being a provider, I will always subscribe to that. Yes, I believe my role is to be supportive and also come in wherever I can help but I think as a man, it's their role to provide for the family, be the leader in the family. So that's the basic part. But I do agree with Nancy, what she was saying. There are other things that I can do that the guy might not be able to do, and we just balance each other out.
So what I'm hearing is that there isn't a clear, set, defined role for each gender. And I think maybe that's an effect of our generation. Are there generational differences? So how would you describe the gender roles for past generations? Because now I'm kind of seeing that there's a bit of a cloudy line between, what those set roles are. But if any of you could put yourselves back to, let's say, like the 50s or the 60s, what do you think those gender roles were then? Let's hear from some of the guys.
So the generation definitely has an impact. If we're talking about the 1950s, the man brought home the bacon, the woman was home with the kids, nurturing, taking care of the household. But when you look at the generational differences, women have power, well, more power than they did before. Women take charge. Women have lucrative careers. So back then, they were limited to certain things that they could do, certain jobs, certain careers, certain paths that they could take. So whether they wanted to be outspoken, whether they wanted to, live a certain life, the gender role was in place. So most of the time, they were, the home. They took care of the home.
Yeah, in a way, like women have more of a freedom, more of a choice, more of a say-so in what it is that they do. So to go further with your point, what I was picturing when I was bringing up the 50s and the 60s is that there was a clear role for the woman. The woman was the caretaker, the, homemaker, or, the person in care of the children. And like you said, the guy brought home the bacon. The guy was primarily the breadwinner. So we come into our new generation where things shift. Women have more of a say-so, women have more of a role. And like you said, women have lucrative careers. In fact, it's not unheard of for the women nowadays, in today's day and age, for the woman to be the breadwinner. Which brings me to my next question. What is your opinion of the role of a stay-at-home dad? Is that something that you can respect? Should the man always be the provider? Jump in.
I mean, I personally think the man should always provide. I think we had this discussion like a few minutes before this started, and we are just talking about like if like a certain situation calls for the man to stay at home for a certain period of time, which obviously would be defined, but like that would be okay to a certain extent. But like I think generally, like even if you want to look at it from like, I know you said we shouldn't go biblical, but like, the man should always provide. Like, there's nothing wrong with the woman earning more and like obviously bringing home more money, but like, I think the man should always provide.
I want to say, I think it's okay, and it's always to a certain extent for me. I think if a woman, if they're in a situation where the guy is not able to bring in the money or the bacon or whatever y'all call it, majority of it, I think it's okay. The woman can be understanding, and as long as she's humble about it and helping him along the way, but also encouraging him to get it together. Well, like, I don't want to harshly say get it together, but like, as long as he's working towards his goals and actually working to achieve something, to then take that role back, I think it's okay for a woman to be supportive in that aspect.
She don't want no scrub.
All right, but so what you're saying is, all right, it's all right for a woman to earn the majority of the money to be the breadwinner, but the guy should still do something, right?
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is a stay-at-home dad.
Oh.
Nah.
So nobody here can get on top, is on board with that, Nancy?
Okay, so the
If
role.
you earn the majority of the money, like let's say you earn well into six figures, are you all right with your husband staying at home, making sure that the kids are cared for, maybe even homeschooling, being a stay-at-home dad? He's not earning anything.
I don't know about all that, but if I forgot who said it, but if there is a period of time where like he's kind of in between jobs where he's not earning, I feel like as somebody that works with kids, if you're gonna stay at home with kids, please make sure that they have like a structured day. Don't just be laying around the house doing nothing. Like take them to the park, take them to the pool, have activities for them to do, so then your kids are also getting something too, as well as you making sure that you're also looking for your job too.
All right, so what I'm hearing is at the end of the day, a guy has to be a provider. You can't just stay at home. Like the only time we should find you at home is if you're in between jobs. So it's regardless of how much you make, you still got to get out there and work. All right.
I feel like as a man, it's something inside of you that's gonna make you want to move.
But that might be a personal thing. There may be guys out there that's like, look, my wife earns $250K. Why do I need to?
Lazy.
Why do I?
No, that's
Lazy.
facts. That's laziness.
No, that's just laziness.
All right, so what we're hearing from this panel is that they can't respect that at all. So we'll see in the weeks to come whether any opinions differ. But speaking of gender roles, let's move things into the world of finances. Should there be gender roles in finances?
What does that mean?
So should the guy earn the most money? And if you're earning the most money, should you make the decisions with that money? Vice versa. So let's say the woman earns the lion's share of the money, is the breadwinner, but she still would like to probably be submissive to her husband and let the husband make the decisions. Should there be gender roles when it comes to the finances?
So I want to actually go back to what Nancy said initially about a guy might be good at something and a woman might be better at something else. There are cases where women are just really good at finances. They're managing money, and the guy might not be. And I feel like it's also, it could be either or. Like the guy could be fully in charge, depending on his knowledge of finances, or the woman could be, or both of them can just learn from each other and do it together. But it depends on what they're bringing to the table.
So what does it really mean when we say the man is the head of the house? In Christianity, that's something that you'll frequently hear. The man is the head of the house, the head of the household. What does that mean, especially if you're not the breadwinner? I would think it comes down to decision making, which makes me ask the question, should there or are there gender roles in the world of finance?
I definitely, yes, well, yes and
It's
no.
tricky, right?
Yeah, it's very tricky. It's very tricky. One,
Well, let's see.
About-
Let me pose this to a woman. So
okay.
let me ask Nancy. So let's say, once again, you're making $250,000 a year, right? Does your husband get the final say so when it comes to the spending of that money, to the finances, as the head of the household? Is that something that you should subscribe to as a Christian woman?
Be honest.
So how does that go?
I will say, just because I'm bad at finances, I think that my husband would be the better choice to make the decisions on where the money goes. Just because, honestly, if you give me that money, you won't see it. So
I feel like the thing is like when you say like final say, it's just like I guess the nail on the head. Like you guys would have probably had like some kind of conversation about it, and then he says like, okay, yeah, let's go this way. So I think it comes down to like the two individuals. Like obviously, the man has to respect the fact that it's his wife making the money, and like obviously, but then obviously the woman has to humble herself and be submissive to him also like taking charge. So like there just has to be a balance in a way for the man to actually lead. And when you say like the man being the head of the house, it's not like the woman is like some kind of second-class citizen where she doesn't have any say. It's just like at the end of everything, the man gets to like make the decision after they've like laid everything out on the table. And the wife obviously would be good with it too.
Right, so the husband really should always consider, the opinion or the feelings of, their wife.
Consider it, but like if
But
that's
at the end
not
of the day, once you've
where you
made a
wanna go,
decision,
yeah.
then let that be the final decision. Women, even if you disagree initially, if your husband has made that final decision, then what I'm hearing is that you should go on board and you should.
Yeah.
Am I right? If it makes sense. All right. So let's shift things a bit. Still in the realm of gender roles, this will be the last kind of question that I ask when it comes to gender roles. But you all are single, hopefully dating soon, and eventually going to get married. So when it comes to marriage proposals, should that duty be left in the charge of men solely? Or is it okay for women
No.
to propose to their men?
No.
That's something that we see, become more
No.
frequent.
No,
Never.
never, no,
Question.
no, no.
Ever.
They shut it down. They shut it down.
shut
So
it down,
it's
shut it down.
always
Next
the
question.
guy.
No.
Why is that?
I just feel like
Is there a
there's
particular reason, or
a
is it
man
just
finds a wife. He finds
Period.
a woman.
Per.
he
I
who
wouldn't
findeth
even
a
feel
wife
like-
finds a
no,
good
I mean,
thing?
Listen, if it floats your boat, no disrespect to you, but I wouldn't even feel like, what am I supposed to be jumping for joy when she
When she bends the knee, what are you supposed to
am
do?
I supposed to be the one popping my leg back? Like, come on, man.
All right.
Nah, man.
So that's another one where we have consensus. Leave the proposals to the guys. Leave the proposals to the gentlemen, ladies. Okay.
First of all, a lady shouldn't even have to put her knee on the ground, first and foremost. You know what I mean? Like,
How chivalrous.
you know
He
what
said a woman's knee should never even hit the ground. All
You know
right.
what I'm saying? Like, back in the day.
In prayer.
Right, unless she's praying, unless she's in a prayer room.
I hear you. All right, so joint or separate bank accounts when you eventually do get together, when you eventually do get married. What's going to work for you? What are you going to require, joint or separate bank accounts, eventually when you do get married?
I believe in joint and separate.
Exactly. I think both as well.
So
Yeah.
both?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Have yours, and then have one for your family. Like, even if you don't have kids, that's your family.
When you start having separate accounts, does that lead to any problems in the marriage? Does that sow seeds of distrust?
Now, I think like, so trust only comes in with the joint account. And I think
Why do you need to have a separate account? Like, what could you possibly need a separate account for?
I mean, like, you still have to be your own self, like your own individual. See, here's the thing. I've heard someone talk about this before, and like, it's a thing where like they say, okay, you have your account, she has her account, and then you guys have a joint account, and you agree on like a certain amount of money that goes into it every month, and then you guys decide on how that money is being spent. But then your personal account, like, if my wife wants to get a new car and like I don't want her to, she can go ahead and like use her money to buy it, like if she wants to. So that's like but then like you said, the family account is for like, you know, it could be like an emergency or whatever, or like just something that if whatever happens, you guys can always fall back to. So, I mean, you were like your own individual before you married your wife, so you shouldn't just not have a personal account anymore because you're married. So.
Okay, any other opinions? Does anyone have a differing opinion? Does anyone disagree with that?
I think at the end of the day, it just boils down to your partner just both of you being transparent with each other. I agree with the joint account, but then I don't have a problem with separate accounts as well. Just as long as like I have access to the account.
But what is,
and he does
I
too.
really want to
I
get
don't
to
know.
the bottom of the need for a separate account, because that, for me, the number one thing that comes out is privacy, is that I want some sort of privacy from my partner. For what possible reason could
I
you
don't
Trying
want
to
that?
surprise them, you know,
It's
trying
not
to
even a
Yeah.
buy
privacy
something
sense.
secretly and
Surprise them
surprise
with
them.
what?
I don't know, buy a car secretly, or you know, how would you do that with a
Yeah,
joint account?
I was gonna say that because I was watching Married at First Sight, and they were talking about like joint or
We don't endorse that. I don't know what that is. We don't endorse that show. Go
But
ahead.
yeah, the finance topic came up, and they were like, okay, do you guys believe in joint or separate? And one of the married couples said, we want a joint and a separate, because like Konika said, sometimes you might want to surprise your partner, and if they look on the bank statement and saw you went to like a jewelry store, like the surprise is ruined. They know that you made some sort of purchase, so just for surprises mainly.
I mean,
Wink,
So
wink.
I'm hearing for surprises, I'm hearing for personal needs, I'm hearing that you are your own person, right? So that brings us into our next topic, seamlessly, his and her needs. So I'll start this off for the guys. What do you think is most important to a woman in a relationship? And for the ladies, what do you think is most important to men in relationships? Ladies first.
I'm gonna be real. Sex is the number one thing for guys. Period.
Okay?
I think.
So that's the one
You said
thing.
what's
That's
the
the
number-
most. That's
you
the
said what's
most
the number
important
one
thing.
thing. You
Okay.
said what's the number one
That's
thing.
what
I
Conica
think.
says, people. Nancy, what do you think is most important? All right. Nancy just said pass. So I don't know. Do you agree with Conica? Like, is it the physicality? Is sex most important to men?
I mean, I guess so. I mean, I'm sure there's other things like spending quality time together and other things, but if you're talking about the
All right.
number one.
So men, don't give your answer yet, but let us know, what do you think is most important to a woman in a relationship?
I think like they want men who can provide. I think that's
Providers.
like the first thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about you, Boomy?
Yeah, definitely. I was gonna say provide, but since he said that, I would say communication, a listener, someone who's there.
So what's most important from Laulu is a provider. You believe that a woman most importantly wants a provider. Boomy believes communication,
Yeah.
but you also kind of think provider is all.
Provider was mine, but
And for Conica, sex. That's all guys think about. And for Nancy, kind of passed it off. But all right, let's hear from the woman, or from women. What's most important to you as a woman going into a relationship?
I'm gonna agree with Wilmy. I think being heard is really important. Guys actually listening, paying attention. Paying attention is important. Like to the things that I like. Like surprising me with little things that I like that I didn't even realize he was paying attention to, things like that. I think it's really important, and providing as well. Yeah.
Pay attention, guys. All right, Nancy, what's most important to you as a woman?
Definitely a guy that listens, just because, like Konika said, I'm somebody that, like, I literally appreciate the little things. Like, if you heard me say, oh, this is my favorite candy, and you went to the store and bought that candy, I'm like, "Brr." That just does something to me.
All right, it's the little things. So communicate, guys, communicate. That's really what's most important to women, at least to these two women here on stage. For the guys, what's most important to you as a man in your relationship? Was it in fact sex? There's nothing
No,
wrong
not
with
at all,
that as
not
long
at
as it's
all.
with the person that you've married. But
Yeah,
I
it's
think
not like the most
what's the
important
most
thing,
important
The
to you?
most important,
Go ahead.
I would say respect. Respect. That's huge for me.
Okay,
I don't tolerate disrespect. That's just
you don't tolerate
Yeah,
disrespect.
It's just,
Okay,
it's just a level of respect that you have for your significant other. It's just respect comes with boundaries. Respect comes with the way you communicate. Respect comes with the way you handle things. It's just respect. It covers a lot of areas. For me, respect is the biggest thing. Because
I
respect
like that.
will help us make decisions. Respect will keep you honest. Respect will keep you faithful. Respect covers a lot.
I
So
definitely
think
agree. Like, if you respect your significant other, whether you're a man or a woman, then that'll inform the ways that you treat them and the actions that you put in towards the relationship. What about you, Lalo?
Yeah, I guess like what I was gonna say falls under respect as well. Cooperation. We have to be able to you have to be able to cooperate with me. I think like most times when like there's problems in relationships is often like from lack of respect and obviously lack of cooperation. Like if they're not seen eye to eye. So I think the most important thing, obviously respect, but like the other things like fall under respect, cooperation, being submissive, all that. So respect.
Thank you. So interestingly enough, when we were producing the podcast, several directors, a few people came together to think out these questions, and that was what we thought would come up for the men was respect. And we actually thought for the women it would be communication, listening to you guys talk and talk and talk, listening to those long stories. We know how important that can be, So guys, listen, as hard as it can be, listen, all right. So let's talk about toxic traits and deal breakers. Do you have any deal breakers when it comes to a relationship or your significant other? What can you not compromise on as far as maybe a toxic trait of theirs or something about them that's going to be a deal breaker? What would that be for you?
Someone that's controlling, I cannot. Yep, that's it. Cannot.
Monica likes her freedom. All right. So a controlling person, that's a deal breaker. Like, you're not even going to go forward in the relationship. All right. Guys?
I mean, I think for me, because of kind of like the person I am, I don't really like lousy women. Like, I like quiet. So like, if I'm like, no, I'm being honest. Like, I mean, if I'm like, cause like, obviously, I want to be able to be somewhere else and like have peace of mind and like not, So like, I mean, for me personally, deal breakers. Obviously, if it's someone I'm going to marry, like I don't want any problems. So I'd rather just be, just cool. And like, obviously, I'm not like.
So help us flesh that out. Is it that you don't like being questioned, or you don't like?
I mean, like, no. I mean, like just being exactly
Loud,
and
too
I mean,
loud, or too animated,
and not even
or
not to me. Like, I mean, obviously, let me tell you, like, women are gonna act differently to their significant other when they're like in the house or like together,
Right.
versus like how they'll act outside. So like, obviously, if you're allowed inside the house, like we're playing and whatever, like that's fine. But like, I'm talking about like
in public, like the way you
Yeah,
carry
like-
yourself in public.
exactly.
Okay,
You mean like ratchet?
that's a good word that would describe it. for
You
for the
know,
audience, you know,
yeah, 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 I'm
a
just trying to,
ratchet
like,
chick. That's something. That's something Laulu doesn't want. What about you, Boomy? It's a deal breaker.
Deal breaker.
You can think it over.
Yeah,
Nancy,
let
do
me
you have
think it over.
anything?
Somebody that's quick to anger. I think I'm a very calm person, and once you start getting angry, I'm definitely somebody that just shuts down. So that's not going to be good for our relationship.
So, guys, you're hearing these are the kinds of deal breakers and toxic traits that could affect your relationship: anger, tempers, controlling nature, someone who has to always dominate a situation or have control of a situation, someone who doesn't carry themselves in the most appropriate manner, someone who's not, what's the word, ladylike, or refined or something like that. Okay, so one thing that we see in relationships, sometimes there's distance that can come between relationships. So you guys aren't particularly dating right now, but in the future, if you are dating, is that something that you could handle? Can you handle a long distance relationship? And if so, how long should a long distance relationship last before it becomes too much or before it becomes, unbearable? We can start off with whether or not you can even tolerate that as an individual. Are you able to keep up distance with somebody for months, maybe even years?
Is it possible? Yes. But would I personally do that? Again, probably not.
So it's something you've tried before? Okay.
I've been in a long distance before. I don't know. It's
What didn't you like about it?
I feel like a lot comes with being in a long distance relationship. I said it's possible because if both are making the effort to make the relationship successful, then it's very doable. But if one person is always, the only one who is like going to see the person or making the accommodation, the effort, then I feel like that's where it just becomes pointless.
So Kanika recognizes it's possible, but for her, she's tried it. It's something that she can't get along with. Anyone else?
I've done it before, and yeah, it's definitely possible. It's definitely workable if y'all have that relationship, if y'all have that trust. But it's something I wouldn't prefer to do again. Now, if circumstances came up and we had to, be long distance, we can make it work, but it had to be for a period of time.
So how long are you willing to endure that kind of thing?
It depends on what it is. Like for example, let's say like the significant other is finishing schooling, for example, like getting a doctorate or getting that higher level learning. If they have to be away for the length of that, okay, do it. You know what I'm saying? Because I know you are my future, we'll make it work. But that would be that determines the length of time, what the reason is.
I like that.
So you get what I mean? It's that whatever the situation calls for determines the length of time.
Exactly.
If it's just that like you want to move and I don't want to go there, and now we have to we're gonna have to reevaluate things.
Got you. You want to jump in?
Yeah, I think like if you guys have already been together first, it makes it easier if you guys have to go apart like for a same period of time, versus like if you guys are just starting off long distance, like it affects, going off of what you said.
I agree. Whether or not you're long distance or even in the same vicinity of your partner, we can all agree that there can be external influences to your relationships. There are outside things that can affect how your relationship, progresses or whether or not it progresses. So one thing I want to focus on for this amount of time is outside influences, and I want to get your opinion on a few things. So let's start with this. What's the best relationship advice you remember receiving or hearing? And who did it come from? So it didn't have to be, given to you directly. It might have been something that you overheard, maybe through a show or maybe through someone else. What's the single best advice that you've ever heard?
I think for me, it was knowing your love language. I know Minister Demiji just talked about it, but even prior to that, learning your love language is really important in a relationship because, for example, one of my love languages is, dang, what is it? I forgot.
It's all right. But learning love languages.
Yeah, learning love languages.
Um, for me, it's not necessarily something I heard elsewhere, but it's actually from the Bible. The definition of love was it 1 Corinthians 13? Just all of that. Love is kind, love is patient. I think that's the best for me. Amongst everything I've heard, I feel like that has stood out to me the most because it embodies what love should really look like.
Well, if not, what about the worst? Let's flip things over. What's the worst advice that you ever heard?
Do you, bruh? Say no.
Yeah, and what does that mean? Like,
Like,
because I kind of agree with that. Like, but
Like a
if you
lot
want
of
to
the
expound
guys-
on that, like, what does
I
that
guess
mean?
if you have your boys or friends that don't respect you, not necessarily don't respect the relationship, but just still want you to, be you, be free.
I think
one of
there's a
the
level of
worst-
selfishness, like that's
Yeah,
attached
selfishness,
To that,
yeah,
do you
and-
like?
Yeah, and I think what's the other phrase that most people, you're single until married. That one's crazy.
That
Okay,
one.
so why? So let's unpack that. Why did that seem like bad information to you or bad advice?
Because that's a trash mindset to have in a relationship. I mean, technically, yeah, but then you're gonna start moving differently. Then you're gonna. It's just I don't know how to explain it. To me, it's just a trash mentality to have. Like if you're gonna be in a relationship, there's a reason you're in a relationship, and there's certain manners and ways you conduct yourself. But if you're saying, "Oh, I'm single until married, but I'm in a relationship,"
Yeah, it's very contradictory.
Yeah.
Like to be in a relationship, but to still have the mindset that
you're single.
I'm single or I'm still free to, do whatever it is that I want to do. Maybe have a wandering eye or still free to, pursue other relationships just because I haven't put a ring on it officially. That could be. Yeah.
See, the thing with that advice is marriage doesn't just like switch off all the things that you've been doing. So if you've had like a single until married mindset till you actually got married, like it's not just going to change overnight. Like it's probably even going to get worse. So that's why that advice is really bad, because if you are keeping that mindset till you actually get married, then like everything just gets messed up from that point on. Because like marriage requires more of everything, more attention, more time, you have to be more open, more honest. And then if you've not already been that before, then
Well, to kind of put all of that in a bow, some of the best advice that you'll hear frequently, especially in the church, if you've grown up in the church as a Christian, is that you should wait until marriage before you have sex with your partner. I think we would all agree that's great advice. So I want to get your perspective, though. Why is that good advice? Why is it important for one to wait until marriage, from your perspective? And it doesn't always have to be the biblical reasons. If you want to attach that to your answer, then that's good. But why is it advisable to wait?
Besides the biblical besides the biblical reason, it creates ties that are hard to break once. Like if things dissolve between you guys, it creates toxicity because then it creates a hold. It creates soul ties, I believe, in a sense. Like your energies are mended. Like a piece of you goes with that person. So it creates unnecessary like emotion and ties that wouldn't have been there if you had waited. That wouldn't have clouded your judgment if you had waited. I think I think
those are good
that's my
answers.
takeaway. Clouding of judgment. That's the main.
I think we would all agree, like, sex is the most intimate, form of, of a relationship, or the most intimate aspect of anyone's relationship. So there are all these ties that you're like emotional ties, physical ties, even soul ties, like your spirit might be attached to someone that you get that physical with. And if something is to happen between you, if you don't make it to the altar, you know, then separating or your judgment is cloudy. I think that was the phrasing that you used. Like, maybe you don't make the best decisions or the most sound decisions because of that physical level of intimacy that's been attached with, or that's been introduced into your relationship. So for anyone else want to jump in on why it's important to wait?
I agree with what Bumi was saying about soul ties. I mean, my perspective or opinion in it is honestly strictly just biblical. Like, it's explained very well in the Bible why it's, why we shouldn't. And so I agree.
All right. So I think we're all in agreements, but still, in today's day and age, you'll see what we refer to as PDAs, public displays of affection. What is your, just your initial opinion when, is that something that is all right to engage in public displays of affection, kissing your significant other in public, hugging each other? Like, is it all right? And when does it become too much? Can it be too much? So Kanika says it's all right,
I think it's
but can it be
fine.
too much?
It can be if it's, well,
Speak freely, please.
I think, well, with everything, we gotta have self-control and discipline. So I feel like we just gotta be mindful of there's a time and place for everything, so we just gotta be mindful. But like just being affectionate, hugging or a kiss here and there in public is fine, but just, be mindful.
Okay. And it never becomes too much, right?
Just be mindful, I think.
Yeah. All right, what about living together before marriage? So let's say you all are single, but it's still good to get your perspective on how that works. As a couple, maybe you've been dating for a certain amount of years and you can see yourself marrying this person, and you decide, let's get an apartment together. Let's see what it's like to live with each other. Is that something that you would advise? Is that a good practice? Is it something that you agree with? And let's say you see yourself marrying this person, like you've talked about it, like you've had these discussions, it's just not official yet, but you can see yourself marrying this person.
I say no. I know there are some couples who do it and they say they're successful, but I personally say no, just because it's opening the door for so much to happen. Like, the Bible tells us to resist the enemy and he will flee from you, right?
So you're setting yourself up for temptation, basically.
There is,
okay?
You're setting yourself up for temptation. It's like you're putting yourself in a situation that's gonna cause you to fall, potentially. So it's like, no.
But what if it's not about that? Like the temptation aside, what if you just really want to see what it's going to be like to be with this person for an extended amount of time? A test run, so to speak.
Well, you hang out with the person. I'm sure you go to their apartment to see what they're living like. There are other ways to see what their life is like before you get into marrying that person.
But you don't know a person until you truly live with them.
Exactly.
That's what, yeah,
Exactly.
that's kind of what I'm getting at. Anyone can put up a front or put their best character or put their best face forward,
And pop up.
even if you, so just pop up one day, just show up unannounced. That might be a deal breaker for some guys. That might end your relationship right there. All right, so living together, is there anyone on stage that agrees with it, that maybe you can set up boundaries? Would it work if you set up boundaries and try your best to adhere to them, or to try your best to be disciplined? Nancy? You don't agree? All right.
Just because it does create room for temptation. I mean, you definitely have to know yourself, know your partner. So, I mean, I know some couples have done it, but just because I know myself, I wouldn't do it.
All right, well, what about, so you're not necessarily living together, but let's say you want to go on a vacation, like an extended stay, away on vacation. Is that all right? Does that lead to temptations? Are you going to get 2 separate hotel rooms?
I feel like no matter what, the temptation is always gonna come up because you're in a relationship, you're in love with each other, things can get heated really quickly. So it's like temptation can happen anywhere. I'm not against vacations, extended vacations. Both just have to be in the same mindset and like really be strong-minded that whatever boundaries are set, they have to stick to it. Otherwise, like, it makes no sense to even go on the vacation or stay together before marriage.
Let's hear from Laulu. It's been a while.
I mean, honestly, I think like, I don't know. I think it has to do with like the two people. Obviously, I mean, for me personally, I don't think I would do it. Like the thing is, I feel like when some things check out already, like you can kind of already tell what it would be like living with someone. So like,
What kind of things would you look for? Like how would you know?
I mean, like we were saying, like respect, like if you're like, because what's the whole point of living with someone? Like you want to see like how they are when they wake up, like are they, or like what they are like. So if some things already check out, like it would be a thing where some things won't necessarily be a problem, like when you guys start living together, because like, I don't know how to explain it, but I guess you guys understand what I'm saying. Like, I don't think you necessarily have to live with the person before marriage, most especially if you would be tempted and you fall for temptation. So you just have to know your partner and like know the kind of person he or she is well enough to, you know, just kind of go ahead to live with that person after you get married. So, I mean, like I said, it depends on individuals, because like for me, like what I said earlier, like if I already, there's just some things like, you know, like a man that wakes up or is angry or is nagging or whatever, like if you already see that from the beginning, like, I mean, obviously you know, or you would think when you guys start living together, you know, this would obviously still be there. Versus like a man who is in controlling, nagging, whatever, like you can already tell all these things. Because at the end of the day, the only difference is just sleeping and waking up together. Like you're still hanging out with the person, like seeing how they are. Like if you stop by at their house, you see how their apartment or whatever it is, like stuff like that.
Yeah, so you don't necessarily have to live with that person, but just all the time spent with that person, spending as much time and intentionally making an effort to get to know someone.
Exactly.
Like you can.
And all their behavioral qualities that you value, all those things.
All right, well, let's start to bring the podcast to a close, and we'll center things, you know, around the church and religiosity. I'd really like to get your perspective on these things. So do you really want or need to marry a devout Christian? Does the person that you end up with have to be devout? Or are there levels to that? Can they be a believer but just not as dedicated? Like, what compromises are you willing to make when it comes to someone that you love, who might not be all too familiar with Christianity, or they might not have been raised in it? So
I think, like you said, there's levels to it. As long as like you're growing, and I see that you're making attempts to grow, you don't have to be devout. I'm not perfect in my relationship with God. There's still, I grew up in church, and there's still so much I have to learn about God. There's still so much that I have to improve with in my walk with God. There's still so many shortcomings that I have when it comes to my faith. So who am I to say that you have to be this, that, and the third? But you have to believe, and you have to be working on your walk. Be steadily, you know, learning. As long as you're putting forth the effort, that's all that's needed. Because even in the relationship, it's not my job to make you do that. God's the one that's going to be the one to. That's between you and God. You know what I mean? So I can't say, oh, you're not devout enough when I'm not. Unless I am that person, I can't ask that of you.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say with like how it first has to like start with you. I also think, I mean, you don't have to be devout, but you have to believe, because like in situations of like finances and like paying tithe and all that, like if you guys disagree, there might be problems that can arise from stuff like that. So if you start dating someone who is an unbeliever and you're a believer, you should probably try to win them over and then see how it goes from there. But like, I wouldn't necessarily advise, like I won't say don't do it, but like I wouldn't advise you like marrying, well,
So
I mean, just 'cause of,
so,
like-
so let me kind of stir the pot a little bit. Like, let's say in your life, in your walk through life, as you're coming up, like you met someone maybe in school or maybe in work, and you really had a vibe and a connection with someone, and you end up talking to this person, and you end up fostering or building what ends up being a relationship, and then you find out that this person is either maybe agnostic or atheist or maybe just not a strong believer. Does that become a deal breaker? And what if they're resistant at first, like, and they're just like, look, this isn't something that, I'm not with the Christianity, I'm not with the religiosity, but I love you as a person, and I'm willing to be with you. Is there a compromise there? Or do you continue to make the effort to try and bring someone over to Christianity, like, despite resistance?
We have to be equally yoked with our partner, whoever that is. And I think it really boils down to mindset. I think we just have to be on the same page in terms of our walk with Christ. I can't be, one who's just like ready to be on fire for God, and this person is just okay with being lukewarm or just like staying where they at in their relationship with God. We're probably not gonna
Even if you met that person outside of the walls of a church or outside of, like a religious, event, like, and you've developed strong feelings for that person, you'd be willing to cut ties and to let that go?
I think the relationship with God aspect is a very important and a big part, and I think it's just one of those non-negotiables for me personally. I think it's very important, and so we just have to be in the same mindset. Like, we gotta be going in the same direction when it comes to God.
You wouldn't take time to encourage the person? Because look at it this way. Outside of a relationship, what are we supposed to be? What is the point of Christianity? To win hearts for God, right? So
true.
When you look at it outside of a relationship stance, you're supposed to be bringing people to church regardless. So, like you said, if they're not on fire, if they're not completely devout, there's a discrepancy, but you're supposed to be bringing them and encouraging them to grow in their faith either way. So it's like, why would that?
One thing that would help would be to get ahead of the situation. So before you even get that deep into a relationship with somebody, is that something that you should be seeking to find out? Is that something that you lead with? Are you trying to find out where someone is spiritually, like, or whether or not they even believe? They don't have to be the strongest Christian or the most sound Christian, but is that something that you have to find out first before you even take the relationship any further? Like, are you a believer? Are you a religious person? Do you go to church? Is that something that you lead the relationship off with then?
Yeah, just because if you are looking for somebody to be like you're equally yoked, I mean, you want to talk about that like up front, like, hey, listen, I go to church, I do this, I do that. What about you? So, but also like what Bumi has said, we are supposed to bring souls to Christ. And I feel like if you're resistant to it, I mean, that happens. People are going to be resistant, but just pray that God is going to work and move something in their hearts, open their eyes, allow them to see something that you are doing that will make them say, wow, okay, you know what, maybe I'll give this a try.
What I heard there is that you can be a good example for your significant other,
Right.
like bringing them to church or just inviting them, being consistent with that.
Yeah.
And letting them know. I think once you get to that point, I think that would even inform towards that other person that, look, this is something that's really important to them. Like, they keep bringing it up, like they keep asking me to make this a part of my life. And, if someone loves you, if someone has, care for you, then I think they should consider those things and then put their best foot forward or, try and make the effort, so to speak.
And I just wanted to go back to the mindset thing. That's why I brought up the whole mindset thing, because if they're doing that because for me, because they love me, is it gonna last? Like, I want you to actually want a solid relationship with God for your own self at the end of the day, not for me. Like, that's not gonna go far, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, and just going off of that, like, the person's transformation doesn't necessarily come from, not necessarily, it doesn't come from you. It comes from God, the Holy Spirit. So, like, when you start doing the things like bringing them to church, or like when you like let them know like this is what you're doing, at the end of the day, God is gonna arrest that person. So, like, it's not necessarily like if they start doing it for you, if like from the jump, that's okay. But then eventually, if they are actually still consistent with like bringing them to church, like watching sermons or whatever, doing whatever you guys do, eventually it would click. Because at the end of the day, like, it's the Holy Spirit who's going to transform your heart, not you. So,
And to wrap all of that up, I definitely think there's also a place for prayer in relationships, and this is one of the perfect scenario where if you're not so sure, or you would love to see your significant other become stronger in the faith, or you're just not sure how to approach them with that particular issue, then take it to God in prayer. There's nothing that's too big for him, and I believe that he could even show you the way or send people your way that would help make that situation a lot more manageable. So I think this is a good place to leave things. I think this was very fun, very informative. I want to appreciate Laolu and Bumi, Nancy, and Kanika for being brave enough to share their perspectives and to inform us and to educate us better on relationships. This has been the Single and Searching Crowd. In the next few weeks, you're going to hear from those who are dating, from those who are engaged and married, and then we'll wrap things up by hearing from our experts, who we like to consider our experts here at Emerge, Pastor Dimeji and his wife Nika. They're going to do a Q&A session. So we don't have all the right answers here. We're not the most informed, but we are willing to share our opinions, and we appreciate you for listening. So tune into podcasts coming for the next 3 weeks, and God bless you as you do so.